Welcome to part 7 of the MACD indicators series. This is the last and final part in the series on the MACD presented to you by Strategic Trading. Please take a few moments to pause the lesson and read the disclaimer. This lesson is going to tackle an area that very few people really speak about vis-a-vis the MACD, and it really is going to discuss what we call the MACD parameters. When you begin to study the MACD over a long period of time, you're going to find that it has certain extreme patterns that it follows, and that these patterns are often repeated. And therefore, when the MACD gets to these levels, it indicates to us that a change may in fact be imminent in the MACD. The parameters will vary significantly from one time frame to the other, and the parameters will also be very different from one instrument to the other. So in order to be able to establish and identify these parameters, it is important to look at the instrument in the context of the time frame that you are analyzing, as well as looking at each instrument differently to identify the appropriate parameters for its MACD. Let's take a look here together. We have a MACD on a 5-minute chart, and it's for the ES Mini, and the MACD has the standard settings. And the way that we begin to do this analysis is quite simple. The first thing that we do is we identify an extreme low for the MACD, and here we see it in the form of the blue line, horizontal blue line at the bottom, and then we also identify an extreme high at the MACD at the top, a point that the MACD tends to reverse at. The process needs adjustments, so let's take a look at it together at how we develop it over a period of time. To demonstrate the concept, now let's take a look at the two extreme lines that we have, the red line being the extreme for the high and the blue line the extreme for the low. And let's take a look over time at what happens. Now, every time we find that the MACD comes down to this level, we tend to actually see that it has reached an extreme and starts to move in the opposite direction. That doesn't mean that it will never exceed, but certainly at the times that it does go beyond this extreme, the probability starts to increase that we are going to see a change. So this helps us to be able to use the MACD as a leading indicator of sorts. Now if you notice here, I still have the standard default settings. However, when you adjust these settings to different settings, you also need to take another look at the extremes. Now notice here we have two levels. I have a level at the number 2 and a level at 3, and it has even exceeded beyond those two. So now it may behoove me to adjust and actually put my outside limit to 4 and keep this as sort of a mid-level. It also helps me to gauge the extent in terms of the move of the MACD towards one extreme or the other. So we continue on. Notice here again at a different point in time, the same line that we had and how it came to it and started to change. These extremes work. Now take a look here, it never quite made it to it. Once again, if we do go outside of the extreme and we get a signal from above the extreme, there is a high probability that prices will take a turn lower and we will see a change in direction. These extreme lines are incredibly helpful, and as you can see, once again, we have the extreme a little bit higher. When I begin to see extremes that far away from a line that I have drawn, I may in fact want to move the line up a little bit so that I get a better feel for the extremes for this particular instrument. And sometimes it does not hurt us to actually have a couple of different levels, a very far extreme and the usual extreme. This all is based on observation over time, but it really does become rather helpful. So for instance here, notice that when it reached way up there at that great extreme, it did come back lower again towards the zero line. This is all on a 5-minute chart. This technique will work on different time frames, but you have to adjust accordingly and draw new lines for each MACD and adjust even further when you change the settings for the MACD. And naturally, these lines will be different for different types of instruments. We would like to thank you for joining us for this mini series on the MACD. We hope that you found it useful. We encourage you to continue to develop your trading education. The more you learn, the more you can earn.